Anyways.
Sorry, we fucked him up. He just threw his notes across the room. He just totally walked away from this episode.
All right, so just you and me, Peter.
How about Jeremy? You can. How about you just start this one from the top? We'll not throw you off with a bunch of.
Thank you.
Okay, just go ahead and take it.
Welcome to I'd Buy That for $1, a podcast about inexpensive, common, and underappreciated records that are waiting to be rediscovered. I'm your host, Sean Hartman, and much like my July 18th birthday brother Vin Diesel, I don't have friends, just family.
That's perfect in so many levels.
Oh, thank you.
Wow. Well, fellas, I'm co-host Jeremy. And I'm out here developing products this week.
Okay, interesting.
This product I'm calling Dog Defense, and it's a microphone shield for singers who like to hold their dogs when they perform.
I've heard that this is a growing trend.
This is a growing trend.
Yeah.
It's becoming more popular by the day, I think. I've got some studies running. We're waiting on the results, but I think it's getting big. Big market here. You know, it kind of makes a little shield, so your dog's like huffing and puffing and weird sounds they make, they're like blocked from, they don't interrupt your tone, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What are you calling it?
Dog Defense. Dee Dee.
Ah, okay. You know, I can think of someone who could really use that, Jeremy.
Yeah?
You know who?
I can't imagine.
You. With Howie, and your dog likes to make lots of noise right near the microphone while we're podcasting.
He does. Oh.
Well, I'm co-host Peter Cook. And guys, I'm feeling quite tired at the moment. I don't know if I can go along. I think I need one more cup of coffee before we go podcast.
I'll go get some Joe ready for you.
Thank you. I'll make it through if you do. To the valley below.
Cool.
So, Dee Dee, huh? Not Dee Dee Ramone?
Not Dee Dee Ramone. I don't like that punk stuff. It's fine. The Ramones are fine. We're talking about Dee Dee Bridgewater today, though.
Uh-huh.
Not only are we talking about her broadly, we're talking about a specific album.
Whoa.
Oh, wow.
That is underappreciated and can be found for cheap. And that's Just Family.
From 1978.
1978, Elektra Records. And I just want to play a track, and then we'll talk about it more afterwards. Does that seem fine with you guys?
I'm down.
More than fine. Let's do it.
Okay. I'm going to start with Maybe Today, Side A, Track 2.
I try hard not to think of you, but my mind won't behave, sorting through old conversations to find a piece of love I can say. Your words still ring in my head, overtones of the things you said. But maybe today I'll see the reasons why our love had to die. I've been looking for an answer to satisfy
That guitar tone, I just love a clean, jazzy guitar. Especially when it's coming from the fingers of one David T. Walker.
Yeah. That beautiful clean tone and that signature sound. He's got those beautiful little licks that sound almost vocal-like and are just so soulful. There's really no one else that sounds quite like David T. Walker. Once you recognize that sound, you can pick him up on anything that he's playing on.
Yeah, and that beautiful guitar mixed with that beautiful voice to start that track. It's a perfect introduction in my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost hard to decide which thing to hone in on as the thing that's sounding the most perfect, because it's across the board fantastic sounding. I just, on the way over here, I had been listening to this in earbuds in preparation, through my phone, and then had this on the speakers in my car while driving over to Jeremy just to record this episode, and wow, it sounded huge in the car.
Yeah, this is more of a nice headphones album than a earbuds album. Well, I am not the foremost expert on Dee Dee Bridgewater. Say that right out of the gate. This was, in fact, an album. There was a Sean Hartman special. It was maybe 2 years ago when I went back to visit Sean once. We were somewhere in a record store, and it was one of those albums he just put into my hands and you buy this. No questions asked. You don't get to ask what it is or why should I? And he puts it in your hands, buy this, and you buy it.
Yeah, I always do that unless the copy is covered in mold, which has happened once or twice, I'm sure. Sorry, Sean.
Yeah, our standards are a little bit different sometimes. It's okay.
Yeah. But otherwise, I always go with the Sean rec and have never been disappointed. I'll say that.
Yeah, I have a specific style of record shopping with friends, and it involves a lot of carefully thought out recommendations.
With not a lot of communication about them.
What?
It's
do you need that?
I guess not. I mean, your track record speaks for itself.
Yeah, also you're supposed to listen to the music, not talk about it.
Ooh,
can you imagine sitting around just talking about music all the time?
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Do that.
Yeah, Dee Dee's a name that I've known for a long time, but I didn't really know anything about her or her music until I sat down and checked this out. Phenomenal voice. I didn't get to spend a whole lot of time with, I didn't look into interviews and whatnot, so I don't know much about the person behind this music.
Well, you're going to learn a little bit today.
Wow. We're honing in on a specific album, and we're going to learn about the artist. I like this format.
Yeah, this is a good format. We should run with this.
Yeah, I think so. I think we found it.
We'll start at the beginning. That makes sense, right?
Yeah, it's not a Quentin Tarantino film.
Denise Eileen Garrett, who, in fact, is Dee Dee Bridgewater, was born in Memphis, Tennessee, 1950, and grew up mostly, though, in Flint, Michigan.
Yeah. Not too far from where Jeremy and I are. A couple hours drive.
Yeah, just down the way here in the Midwest.
Where Michael Moore hails from as well.
Oh, right. Yeah.
That Roger and Me documentary.
True. If you want to be really depressed, go ahead and read about the history of Flint, Michigan, or watch Michael Moore's film on it. If you don't want to be depressed, listen to Dee Dee Bridgewater. Her father was a jazz trumpeter who also taught in a high school and, in fact, was a music teacher for one Charles Lloyd.
Oh, wow.
It's been coming up a lot lately.
Former I'd Buy That alum.
Yeah.
And he also played, his name is Matthew Garrett, by the way. He played with Dinah Washington as well.
Okay, yeah, so pretty legit musician.
Yep. Quite legit. The family, though, moves to Flint, Michigan, and Dee Dee describes still listening to the Memphis radio when she lived in Flint, Michigan, but also said she was influenced by the Motown sounds coming out of nearby Detroit at that time.
Yeah, that's just down the road from Flint.
Yep. She started playing in clubs at age 16, and her father would chaperone her to the clubs. So a more responsible arrangement than some of our previous artists. We're out performing in bars at 12, sneaking out of their homes and stuff. This was a little more above board. Pops would take her to the club and she would blow everyone away with her singing. She then went to the University of Illinois and won a singing competition in which, during this competition, she would meet future husband, trumpeter Cecil Bridgewater. She got to tour the Soviet Union and ended up just leaving college, though, because she found, her music was kind of taking off more and more, and college was kind of hard, and why go to college for music if you're already doing it? So her and Cecil moved to New York, and they both were working with Thad Jones and Mel Lewis Orchestra. Dee Dee would later credit Thad with kind of being the basis of her sound. This is where she learned to arrange and kind of learned how songs are structured. She says, everything from her career was built off that.
Very formative experience.
Correct. In 1974, she puts out her first solo album, Afro Blue, which was recorded in Tokyo and was released in Japan. So you're probably not going to find that one around here being America.
That's surprising that first album go afar to record it, but it must have been the label.
Yeah, I couldn't find much as far as why that seemed to happen, but it did. And this was just generally a big year for her, 1974. This is when she would also sing on Stanley Clarke's debut album, Children of Forever. Also, the same year, signed on to a Broadway production of The Wiz, despite having almost no music theater experience before that. She was Glenda the Good Witch in it.
Interesting. The Wiz hasn't come up in a while.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
Yeah.
She recorded her second album in 1976. It was a self-titled record that came out on Atlantic and sort of drifted away from jazz a little bit. She initially established herself as a jazz singer. She's playing with these big band orchestras. Her self-titled album began exploring sounds of soul and a little bit of funk that would later inform this album in 1978, Just Family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, obviously, some of the previous artists that we featured that one might feel inclined to compare her to would be like Patrice Rushen or Brenda Russell. But I think that would be kind of an easy way out. I don't think it's quite the same.
No, Patrice Rushen did come to mind to me when I first heard this, but it feels a little more experimental, and this album in particular is like a little proggy kind of.
Yeah, it's not very pop.
No. And I wanted to mention that first cut we heard, Maybe Today, was written by Gilbert Moses.
That was her second husband?
That was her second husband. So sometime in the mid-70s, her and Cecil Bridgewater got divorced. In 77, she marries Gilbert Moses.
So this is 78, so they were newly married at this time.
Yeah.
And he wrote a few songs on this, correct?
Yeah, he wrote like half the songs on this. It looked like maybe he wrote the lyrics. He was like a director and play kind of person.
Yeah, for some reason I was just looking at the songwriting credits and noticed that she does not have any on this album, correct?
Correct.
Then I was wondering who's that guy, and did a little digging around and saw that. Yeah, he had a whole like career unto himself.
Yeah. On the cover of this album, which is, probably why I would have just skipped over it in the bins. But it's a naked pregnant woman standing in the desert. And when Sean handed it to me, I was kind of scratching my head a little like, do you really think this is going to resonate with me? But it does. It's good. But that's also relevant because in 1978, she would have a daughter with Gilbert named China Moses, who would go on to be a jazz singer herself when she grew up.
Seems to happen in the family.
Before we go any further, let's play another jam. Next, I wanted to feature Sorry Seems to Be the Hardest Word.
Oh yeah, this is a good one.
And that's Side A, Track 4.
And we're going to start a little ways into this one, correct?
Yeah, we'll skip the long intro and let people hear some of that violin that's pretty rad on this track.
Excellent.
What do I do when lightning strikes me? And I wake to find that you're not there. What have I gotta do to make you want me? What have I got to do to be heard? What do I say when it's all over? And sorry seems to be the hardest word. It's sad, so sad. It's a sad, sad situation, and it's getting more and more absurd. It's sad, so sad. Why can't we talk it over? Oh, it seems to me that sorry seems to be the hardest word. It's sad, so sad. It's a sad, sad situation, and it's getting more and more sad.
Like we were saying of the first selection, how David T. Walker's guitar tone is very distinct and you can always pick him out once you know it. That violin there jumped out at me when I was first listening to this, and I thought, oh, that sounds a lot like the violin on Bob Dylan's Desire album, and sure enough, it's Scarlett Rivera who played on that album.
Yeah, from just 2 years before this.
Yeah, very similar.
Yeah, and she was also a part of the Rolling Thunder review.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So that was a really cool connection to make, and hence why I went with the "One More Cup of Coffee" lyric at the top.
And that was an Elton John and Bernie Taupin song, which I don't remember Elton John making songs quite that proggy.
Yeah. Yeah, the drums there towards the beginning as it went into the song, that's like something you would expect to hear on classic rock or like a Yes album.
Da-dum, 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 da-dum.
Yeah. Those like caterwauling
Yeah.
drums.
I mean, that could have been drummer Harvey Mason, of the Headhunters who is on this album, or it may have been the percussionist Airto Moriera. I'm guessing it was a percussionist. It kind of sounded like congas or whatever they call them.
Yeah, could have been either one. Those are both pretty legendary names as far as session players go, and they also both have records of their own. There's actually a couple Harvey Mason records that's long been on our list of potential albums, and Airto has his own records as band leader with CTI.
Yeah, it's a pretty stacked lineup overall. You got George Duke playing keys on this thing.
Mm-hmm. Legendary guy we've talked about many times, and also has several bargain bin records that are well worth talking about.
Correct. Got Alfonso Johnson.
Yeah, from Weather Report.
Yeah, it was in Weather Report on bass. I guess covering some backup bass for Stanley Clarke, who produced this album and does bass on some of the songs. You also got Chick Corea, fellow Return to Forever member
with Stanley
Clarke.
Notable Scientologist.
Notable Scientologist and player of electric piano on this album.
Yeah, that's just a few of the people. It's like you said, it's a stacked lineup.
Yeah, those are a sampling of some of the biggest names on here, but yeah, quite stacked. As was mentioned, Stanley Clarke produced this. This was like in LA. She had moved to LA at some point. She never really hit it big, per se. This was one of her highest charting albums, and it didn't break the top 100 in the R&B charts even.
Yeah, I expected her to, like when I went to Spotify, I expected her to have at least one or two songs that I recognized, and that didn't seem to be the case.
No, she never really broke through into the mainstream. She more so just dominated this niche of jazz singer who like brings in all these other influences like soul and funk, and yeah, she would kind of move into a little more poppy territory in the 1980s. She continued recording and touring. Then at some point during touring, she fell in love with France and decided to move there permanently. So 1986, she's in France. She's doing a lot of TV stuff, but has kind of stepped back from music a little bit. She said she really felt comfortable in France because she felt people appreciated her for her talents and abilities and didn't see her for the color of her skin. In the 1990s, she returns to jazz, and she's working with Horace Silver. She did a pretty wide variety of material. She did like an Ella Fitzgerald album, Billie Holiday, but she also did like the German opera composer Kurt Weill.
Mm-hmm.
And did a collection of French traditional songs. So she was kind of going all over the map, but kind of went back into a more jazz-focused sound overall. In 1999, she became a Goodwill Ambassador for the UN and worked to bring attention to issues around hunger and food security. In 2017, she was named an NEA Jazz Master, which is probably the highest honor in jazz you can get. It's got to be, right?
Yeah, I don't think it goes higher than that in jazz.
To be the master of it, yeah.
Yeah.
She also, during that time, was hosting an NPR show for over 20 years called Jazz Set. That looks like it ended in 2014, so I'd like to call her a coworker, but can't really because she got out of NPR before I started.
A colleague. We can just say that.
She's a colleague of sorts. She won 3 Grammys over her career and also a Tony for her Wiz performance. So she's halfway to an EGOT, still got some time left. Her latest album was from 2017 and was recorded in Memphis, where she was born. And it's called Memphis, I'm Ready. So, still recording music as of a few years ago. She's touring Europe right now as of the recording of this. She's in Europe touring.
Whoa, working hard.
Yeah. It seemed that some of her more recent releases, meaning the last 10 or 15 years, those, aside from this album, were like some of her highest charting albums. Like, I think she's, been in the game long enough now that she's got a pretty big fan base and is super respected. So
Yeah, I saw there was some reviews that just kind of like brushed over her early career. I was like, yeah, she was okay if you like that kind of thing in the 70s, but she really hit her stride in the 90s. That's the stuff you got to check out. You don't usually see that with artists from this time period.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that has to do with, how jazz purists can be. I think the way she incorporated soul and funk and some of like the prog rock sounds into this stuff, I think it makes this album super interesting sounding.
mm-hmm.
If it was like straight ahead jazz singing, I probably wouldn't be that interested by it. But yeah, I think that's also the same reason it kind of got brushed off.
Yeah, I mean, we saw what happened when Patrice Rushen abandoned the more like traditional jazz sounds and fusion and stuff and went towards vocal, slightly more pop-leaning jazz.
Yep.
Yeah, there's plenty of jazz artists who crossed over into pop or R&B that are now stocking the dollar bins as a result. And we're digging through and telling you which ones are still great.
And if you want a recent performance of Dee Dee's, there is a Tiny Desk concert from 2018.
Yeah, that was the inspiration for your latest business venture, right?
It was. I was watching it and I'm like, she holding a dog? And she like holds her dog,
Daisy
through this performance. And then when I was like looking at more modern interviews and stuff, like the interviewer would mention it like, Dee Dee walked in with her dog Daisy, and they seem to be pretty inseparable, and that just melts my heart.
They said it couldn't be done.
They said it couldn't be done, but Daisy Dunn did it.
Well, do we want to listen to another selection from this record?
Let's listen to another selection.
What do you got?
Well, if you had to guess which song I would definitely play, Peter, what would you guess?
Well, I'm guessing that since we didn't feature it on the Michael Franks episode, The Art of Tea, you want to play her version of his song Night Moves.
That's the one. So here's Night Moves, Side B, Track 3.
Nothing to do with Bob Seger, right?
Fortunately and unfortunately, that is true.
The music begins and the titles fade in, starring you and me.
So we've talked a lot about how there's these prog elements going on in this record, and I think that a lot of that probably comes from Stanley Clarke being the producer and kind of leader of this session. And you listen to Stanley Clarke's solo material, and it's, the kind of jazz fusion that leans very heavily into the prog territory. Sometimes like a little too much for my taste. So I think it's fascinating hearing him work in more the producer arranger and kind of toning that down and using those prog elements to just kind of color this sort of like jazz R&B thing going on. It's such a beautiful, unique mixture of influences that could only be pulled off by this level of pros that are on this record, as we've mentioned.
I gotta say the bass in that track is ridiculous, though.
Yeah.
The production on it. It's like so thunky and out front.
Yeah, that's Abraham Laborio, who we featured, interestingly enough, on the Andy Pratt episode. He played on Andy Pratt's Self-Titled in 1973. And he also played on Patrice Rushen Patrice, 1978.
Wow. Yeah. I know that name, but it's been a while.
Well, that's all I got on Dee Dee here. She's still out there writing her story, so keep an eye out for Dee Dee. If you're in Europe especially, she seems to play there more, which makes sense because that's where she lives.
Yeah, and if you weren't entirely vibing with the selections you heard today, maybe still give the whole album a shot because there's a lot going on here. In fact, I would say my two favorite tracks on this album we didn't even feature, so there's a lot to get from this record.
Yeah, there were a couple songs that I was really into as well that we didn't feature, so there's I can I can echo what Sean just said.
Yeah, these are the Jeremy picks.
True.
I would say this is a cheerier, more up-tempo album than I've probably presented here, but
yeah, you could probably make like a Tommy Rowe album sound like a depressed singer-songwriter. You know how to pick them for Jeremy.
That's true. I got my own special lens.
Well, speaking of knowing how to pick them, as the person who picked this album for Jeremy, Sean.
Yeah.
What else would you pick for people who might like this kind of stuff?
Well, I've got a couple ideas of some cheap records, but I'm only going to tell them to you if you let me also recommend one expensive record. These are my terms.
I thought you were going to say I'm only going to tell them to you if you act like I'm throwing this at you without any preparation for it, as we've done so much here in season 5. What? But no, you planned this, Sean. Well, this was a planned bit.
What?
Yeah, do what you want to do, Sean.
Okay, all right.
You have, yeah.
We're in agreement. Okay, I have permission. Jeremy?
I don't accept your terms, but I'll just cover my ears. So you
okay.
can go ahead.
Well, I'm going to do the expensive one first, so just you can check out for a little bit here. One of the players on this record who we did not mention, Ronnie Foster, keyboardist, has an absolute jazz funk holy grail masterpiece that's worth checking out. Two-Headed Freep, F-R-E-A-P, on Blue Note Records from 1972. Excellent album.
But not cheap?
Not cheap. Not cheap. Listen to it online, give it the old stream test, and then, see if you get lucky someday.
Or maybe you're rich and you can just afford a copy.
There are a few of those people out there, I guess.
And if you're rich and want to throw your money around like that, then go over to patreon.com/I'd Buy That Podcast and sign up for the vinyl tier, the $25 tier. We'll send you a record and a handwritten note every month.
Perfect, Peter. Well
Seamless.
done.
That's why you're the pro.
All right, on to the next thing.
Okay, so the cheap recommendations. Jeremy, are you back with us?
Oh yes, I just walked in the room.
Okay,
Are you about to do your recommended similar albums?
Yeah, the cheap ones, the bargain bin ones, the authentic ones.
Oh, cool.
Some critics might consider this too easy of a comparison, but the first one I wrote down is Patrice Rushen, self-titled from 1978.
Who would say that?
Who would say that? I think there's a lot of similarities between Patrice and her for sure. There's like the jazz element there, and you can hear like some of the, the jazz roots going on, but it's so much more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's that sneaky sophistication.
Yeah, and just that like adventurous spirit. Like, what would happen if I put this and this together? Let's find out.
Yeah.
Another artist that we have talked about before, but this time a different record, and one that I think is definitely a really good pairing with this as far as the combination of genres and the overall mood. But Rufus and Shaka Khan, Ask Rufus from 1977. That's the one that I believe we mentioned it on the episode, is often considered one of the fan favorites. It's the little more sophisticated sound to it. Doesn't have quite as many of the hits on it, but it's a masterpiece.
Yeah, I mean, I've since we featured that album, Rufusized album, I've listened to a lot more of that catalog, and it's hard to go wrong.
Yeah, very true. Last recommendation, another jazz singer working into the R&B and even disco realms, Linda Clifford, If My Friends Could See Me Now, from 1978.
Now, that one I know nothing about.
Well, keep an eye out. It's in many, many bargain bins. Easy to find. Great album.
Well, thank you, Sean.
Anytime.
This is kind of like, for our listeners, this is kind of like having Sean hand an album to you.
Yeah. It's just like more talking, though.
Yeah, he gives a little more explanation here than he does in person.
Yeah. I mean, if you need an explanation, just ask next time, Jeremy.
I don't, though.
All right. Well, okay. Everything's good here then.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it.
Well, we've already plugged the Patreon, so
I'll just plug it again.
Okay. If you do want Sean to send you records and recommendations, go over to patreon.com/IBuyThatPodcast.
Seamless.
And sign up today. There's a whole lot over there. Bonus episodes, mixes, etc. Please help us out here in our little venture.
You make us sound so desperate all of a sudden.
I don't know where that came from.
For just 35 cents a day, you can keep this podcast alive.
Yeah. All right. Since I'm getting desperate, we should probably head to the finish line.
Yeah, let's head to the finish line. I wanted to end on Melody Maker, the final song of the album.
This one, when it started, I kind of thought it was going to be the Velvet Underground Sunday Morning.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got those vibes. It's that's probably why I like it, though.
It also just feels like a nursery rhyme that at one point had a children's chorus that was at some time removed. Like, I was a little bit surprised that you picked this one.
Well, it's because they removed the children's chorus. I respect that decision.
Oh, okay.
The theoretical children's chorus.
Yeah, the fact that it's the notes that we're not saying by the children's
That's jazz,
chorus.
baby.
Oh boy. Okay, let's get out of here. That's the last track on the album, side B, track 5. I'm co-host Jeremy.
I'm co-host Peter.
And I'm co-host Sean.
Melody maker, play it for me. Life and all its melodies. Melody maker, play it for me. The mysteries that surround me. Everything does change, this I have learned. But if I'm to see myself through, I'll need to know how life can flow. Play me your sweet melodies. Melody maker, lead me to know seems that each man's heart